Okay, so let's talk about one of the most powerful, complex, and honestly misunderstood figures in all of mythology, Morgan le Fay. Now, when you hear that name, I bet your mind probably jumps to one specific place, right?
Yep, this one word, villain. She's kind of painted as the ultimate antagonist of the whole Camelot saga, isn't she?
Or maybe this is the label that comes to mind. Witch. The dark sorceress, pulling all the strings from the shadows. That's the story we've all been told, the one we think we know.
But what if that's not the whole story? What if I told you that's not even close to how her story actually began?
All right, so to really get into this, let's start with the version of Morgan le Fay we all recognize, the legendary Witch Queen, the one who's always seen as King Arthur's shadow.
Right, so this is the Morgan we know from all the later legends, the movies, the books. She's King Arthur's half-sister, this incredibly powerful sorceress. She's often portrayed as this dangerous seductress, a political manipulator who's basically at the root of Arthur's downfall. Cunning, ambitious, dangerous. That's the character that's been cemented in our minds.
Okay, but this is where the story takes a massive turn, because that whole villain image, it's a much later invention. To find the real, original Morgan, we have to dig way back into her forgotten origins, back when she was known as the Healer of Avalon.
And this just completely flips the script, doesn't it? In the early Celtic traditions where her story comes from, Morgan was all about water, healing, and otherworldly knowledge. She was seen as a fairy woman or a priestess of Avalon. Not a dark witch at all, but this benevolent figure, totally connected to nature and sacred wisdom. And get this, in some of the earliest written versions of the legend, like Geoffrey of Monmouth's stuff from the 12th century, she's the one who saves Arthur. Think about that. Far from causing his downfall, she's his savior. After his last big battle, when he's mortally wounded, it's Morgan who takes him to Avalon to heal him. So how in the world did that change?
Yeah, that question is really the key to her whole story. How did her story get twisted so much? Let's look at how they made her into a villain.
Exactly. How does a revered healer become a feared witch? And the answer is pretty fascinating. It's not that Morgan changed. It's that the people telling her story changed, and the world they were living in changed right along with them. You can really see her transformation over time. She starts in early Celtic myths as this priestess of Avalon. By the 12th century, she's a benevolent healer. But then, as you move into later medieval Europe, boom, she becomes a wicked sorceress. See, as the stories were passed down and retold, especially in a Europe that was becoming more and more Christian, powerful women from older pagan myths often got a villainous makeover. Her sacred knowledge was suddenly demonic magic. Her independence was suddenly rebellion. And this whole transformation wasn't just random, It wasn't just a simple character assassination. It's because Morgan started to represent something very specific, something that was often feared, a woman with power. She became the archetype of the witch queen. Now, this is a really crucial idea. A witch queen is a woman with power, but no throne. What does that mean? It means her authority doesn't come from a man, not a king, not a husband, not some official title. It comes from inside her, from her own knowledge, her own will. Her power was completely outside the normal, male-dominated structure of the court, and that, you see, made her incredibly threatening. And you can really see this conflict play out here. On one side, you have Arthur's court. It's all about order, rules, lineage. It's about statecraft. But then you have Morgan's Avalon. It's mystical, it's emotional. The story started framing it as chaos. Basically, it represented everything that the court tried to control or push down. The mystical, the emotional, the untamed feminine, and that was painted as something dangerous.
So what we're left with is this incredible paradox. She's a healer and a destroyer, a sister and a threat, a teacher and a manipulator. She's powerful, but she's condemned for it. The thing is, the later storytellers just couldn't handle that kind of complexity. It was easier to flatten her out, They kept the scary parts and decided her power wasn't a gift, it was a sin.
So why should we care about some mythological figure's PR makeover from hundreds of years ago? Well, because the way her story was rewritten tells us a lot about a pattern that's frankly timeless. It's about how powerful women are often treated. And this quote just nails it. The real core of her character isn't about being wicked. It's about being independent. Her biggest crime, if you want to call it that, wasn't casting spells. It was her autonomy. She didn't listen to her brother, the king. She learned her own magic. She wielded her own power on her own terms. And back then, that was absolutely unforgivable.
And you can actually see a pattern emerge from this, a kind of formula for demonization. Step 1, a woman is intelligent and independent. Step 2, she challenges the men in charge, the brothers and kings. Step 3, her power is immediately seen as a threat. And step 4, the story gets rewritten. Healer becomes witch. Morgan's story is a textbook example of this.
But you know what? Her story doesn't end there, in the Dark Ages. Because today, her story is being reclaimed. You see it in a lot of feminist literature. People are looking back and seeing her not as some flat, one-dimensional villain, but as this incredibly complex and powerful heroine whose story was basically written by the people who feared her. They're finally giving the Witch Queen her voice back.
Which leaves us with a final, really important question to think about. Morgan le Fay's story pushes us to ask something that goes way beyond old legends. When a woman is called a witch, what power is she really being punished for? What independence, what knowledge, what threat to the way things are is actually behind that label? It's something to think about.